Now that you're here at Grief to Growth, I'd like to ask you to do three things. The first thing is to make sure that you like, click notifications, and subscribe to make sure you get updates from my YouTube channel. Also, if you'd like to support me financially, you can support me through my tip jar at grief2growth.com. It's grief, the number 2, growth.com/tip jar. Or look for tip jar at the very top of the page or buy me a coffee at the very bottom of the page, and you can make a small financial contribution. The third thing I'd like to ask is to make sure you share this with a friend through all your social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Thanks for being here. Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hey everybody, this is Brian back with another episode of Grief to Growth, and I've got a really exciting guest with me today. This is another near-death story, and I know you guys love those. And this is someone who I just heard pretty recently and said I had to get her on, so I asked her and she graciously agreed. So we just met for the first time a few minutes ago. Her name is Susanne Seymoure, and at the age of 12, she died by hanging from her scarf on a ski hill in a freak accident. She was left alone for 45 minutes. She encountered Jesus, angels, and a lot more. Now, she did keep her story a secret until pretty recently, and now she shares her childhood journey in a new book that's called My Secrets from Heaven, and hopes to add more love, comfort, and inspiration to others in the world. And she also became a registered nurse after her experience. So I just want to give a real quick introduction. I want to let Susanne tell her own story. So with that, I want to welcome Susanne Seymoure to Grief to Growth.
Oh, hi. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Susanne, it's really nice to meet you. I was telling you and I were talking. We got started just right away, and I was like, we got to start recording because we had a lot of good exchanges before we got started here. But I know that you had this experience when you were 12 years old, and you kept it a secret for a little while. So tell me about the experience and what led up to it.
Okay. Um, so I was 12 years old, and my parents, I give a little background in my book about my parents because I think people like to know what influenced your life
Hmm.
before that experience. I just think it gives a complete picture and allows people to get a richer experience. So my parents were immigrants. They came over from Germany and settled in America, hoping, they had survived the war with Hitler and the Nazis as children. So they were survivors. I did not have a strong religious background at all. There was no prayer in my home or any practice, so to speak. It was they were scientific. My father was a very scientific engineer, and they wanted to live life. They weren't interested in reviewing the past or talking about heaven or death or any of it. So for them, that was really my experience as a child. When I was 12, they were reunited with my grandparents who decided to move here, and they built a home together in Pennsylvania. And one blizzard, so the story begins one blizzard day in the 70s, 1975. We didn't know it was going to be a blizzard. Of course, the weatherman. Oh, a little snow, don't worry about it.
Hmm.
So we're like, what are we going to do today? We don't want to sit in the house. Let's go for a walk. Then we found our old skis in the basement. And my mother said, let's just take the skis and see if we can't run down the hill a few times. So it was my grandparents, my parents, my brother, and myself, and we went for a journey and a hike. We wound up getting into this blizzard just came out of nowhere. The snowflakes were, but we did make it to the hill. It was a struggle. We got lost because the roads and the forest looked the same. So we wound up getting lost, but we did finally make it. The ski hill was not for public use. And the reason I tell this is because there were no safety features, no, it was just my family there that day. As a matter of fact, the maintenance man happened to be nearby and was locking up another facility. And he turned it on, telling my parents, just shut it off when you leave. Here's the key. So this big machine was in a booth that pulled this rope for the ski hill. So my brother and I, not being regular skiers, we had, a couple pair of used skis, decided to get in a few runs since we walked all that way. And my parents and my grandparents stayed at the bottom of the hill. So I'm setting the scene. And this was just a freak accident. The rope spins spiral. And so it pulled extra hard because this wasn't a rope that a ski lift that was regulated. It was just a local community. It was a large lift, but it wasn't the typical. Anyway, we looked at the booth before we started because my grandfather, my father, they're all engineers, and they wanted to take a look at it. And we noticed there was a little square cutout, probably the size of your computer screen. And it went into this shack, and the rope went in, and then it came out up high again out of the same size.
Okay.
Inside was this giant pulley. Well, on my way up, I grabbed a hold of the rope the best I knew how. I didn't have any skiing lessons or, any instructor. So I grabbed it, and my scarf entangled in the rope. And as it twisted, I thought I can get out of this, and I was a very I had a lot of inner strength. I wasn't a fearful person. I'm like, I can get out of this. So I started to work on it. Really quickly, I realized, wow, that hole's coming up ahead. I have a few seconds here. And it got tighter and tighter, and my head hit into all the ski poles on the way up, and it became a very violent hanging. And so I hung the whole way up the ski lift. And at the end, I thought, well, my head's either going to go in it has to go in that square, and I'll either be decapitated or it'll be crushed. And I knew there wasn't a way out at that point. A few minutes later, or seconds or moments, I wake up, or I was awake. I don't know. I went from seeing that entranceway, and then I remember the next thing I saw was looking over towards the woods, and I saw this beautiful, beautiful being walking towards me with beautiful light. And on a gray day with lots of snow, you really notice this light. And it just was warm. And I remember being very cold, and then all of a sudden now I'm warm. And there's just this radiance of it's just everything, love and beauty. And it's coming towards me. And I thought, that's my dad. My dad is coming to get me, because I love my dad. So he was coming towards me, and he's going to rescue me. And I was looking, and then I realized that's not my dad, because as he kneeled towards me, he let me know who he was. And I hadn't seen, pictures, or, we didn't talk about angels. It wasn't part of my growing up. And he let me know that he was Jesus. And his hands reached forward, and he had two angels with him. And they were not like the angels I've seen in pictures where they're women or female, and they have beautiful sparkly wings. These were males,
Mhm.
and they were actually they had strength, they had kindness, and they had humor towards me as a child. So there was a taller one and a shorter one, and the shorter one kept tripping as they were coming forward, and the taller one was like, "Come on, keep up, and hurry up." And so I was giggling because they smiled. They were, a little silly. And Jesus had his hands out, and then he touched me and he picked me up. And I remember just feeling like it was the love of 1,000 loving fathers. Like it wasn't so secure and safe and home and family. And I knew that he told me everything, just communicating with his eyes
Hmm.
and his hands. And it was almost it is telepathic, or whatever word we want to use. It's hard to find a word for what we don't have here, but he communicated everything about himself to me, and I understood that he knew everything about me in a moment. Everything. He could hear my heart, my thoughts, my worries, my pain, everything. He knew. So it was a extraordinary, unforgettable experience that I've carried from 12 years old all my life. And, people who might wonder, is it a dream? Is it, lack of whatever they might think. I've had many dreams and I've had many experiences, and I've been a nurse, an RN for over 25 years. And I've have children and a family, and I know what I know.
Mhm.
That experience of having Jesus save you or come to you, it's the most real thing I know. And it's my compass. It's
Hmm.
my inner compass. And that's not saying I always follow it, because we
Yeah.
do have free will.
Yeah.
And I'm not a saint in that way, but I have that compass where every once in a while I'll look up and check in and go, oh, I know I'm going the wrong way, but so, but that love, if people understood, and I believed everyone understood that love,
Hmm.
because when I came back, he brought me back. I just thought everyone knew that experience, because people talked about Jesus and love and all these things, and there was so much to read about then, because now I'm looking for, where is he in this world? Like, and I knew he was here, but I
Mhm.
wanted to find him in his house and churches and places of worship, and I wanted to be part of it. And so as I grew up, I realized more and more the lack of, for so many, and it always made me sad for them, because I thought, if anyone ever knew how much you're loved, you would never feel alone. You
Hmm.
would never ever feel alone. So yeah, the skiing accident brought me insights to heaven, insights to my life here, and it led me to choose to become an RN. He didn't tell me to be a nurse. He didn't, beat his chest and point his finger and say,
Mhm.
"This is what you're going to do." When I had my experience with Jesus, I realized how much our free will is honored. He's not a controlling God. He's not a he loves what we think and what we feel and what we do, and he gets excited by it when we share, and he gets happy for us when we follow our own inner guidance along with him. So I knew we had this tremendous free will, and they support it.
Mhm.
They're very supportive. So there is a bigger picture I understood as well, and that helped me understand the why. People ask why, but why is a tough question because it's such a big picture and there's so many components that are always moving along with our free will and along with heaven's plans that it probably would take a telepathic communication to get that information downloaded quickly. Um, and time here is very short. So I don't know that we can figure out all the whys while we're here.
Yeah.
But I did see angels. I did see Jesus. I experienced councils that I knew there was like a hierarchy and a government that had specific roles. It wasn't people flying around and or sleeping, just resting in lounge chairs. There was activity, there was work, there was communities, there were home. It was just very alive, very, very much connecting to here. So that it wasn't a big difference. It was just this love and this understanding and lack of judgment and the clarity. Things just can get done so much easier than here. I have a lot of struggle here with trying to say what I want to say after having people understand without you really even talking.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
Well, I want to ask you a few questions. I understand there was something that preceded this event with you actually even putting the scarf on. So tell me about that. There was a little bit of a conflict there.
Yes. So that when I first wrote my story, I almost called it the entangled scarf because when we were leaving the house with our skis going for our hike, my mother said, put a scarf on, it's cold outside. So I put a scarf on and I tied it with one loop and swoop. And then she looked over and said, tie it again. So I thought, you mean make it into a knot? She said, tie it one more time so it stays, so it's warm. And she came over and tied it and had it bunched up around my neck. And I remember thinking, I never really had a big confrontation with my mother. She was authoritative
Hmm.
and back talk and all that just didn't go in my house. So my mother said it, you did it, or there was going to be, conflict.
Hmm.
So I did it, but I looked at her and I said, I don't understand why. I just didn't want that. So we had this argument. She said, keep it tied. I said, I will not. And I untied it. And this went back and forth and everyone's watching in my family. And I describe it like, did you ever just get such a strong feeling that you don't want to go somewhere? You don't want to be somewhere. You don't want to wear something or do something, but you don't know why. I've heard people talk about they don't want to get on an airplane so that was such a strong feeling. It became to the point where we weren't going to go. She was saying, well, we're not going to go until you do that. And she said, you're ruining the whole day for everyone. So for me to stand up to that instinct was so strong that I did not want that knot. Eventually I had to comply because, they were all wanting to go for this hike and skiing. So I did, but I remember feeling absolutely sick about it.
Yeah.
And little did I know when I was on that hill that I tried to put my hand through between my neck and my scarf. And I knew in that moment, I have a knot in my scarf. I'm not going to be able to get this out with one hand while it's spinning. Had I had the one, I think I would have had a easier, maybe, I don't know, but I knew that was a sure thing then, having that knot. And so that was intuition, I suppose. And
Yeah, and that to me that brings up a question because it sounds like it was intuition, but do you feel like this experience, you talked about free will, but did this have to happen? Because it's interesting, you and your mother are having this conflict, but eventually your mother wins out, which I'm assuming is what led to you actually having this experience.
Did I think the experience had to happen?
I'm asking you at this point, looking back on it.
Wow. I don't I don't I don't think so. I
Okay.
don't think so. I think I think I got a warning, and I think whether it's angels or your guidance, something was warning me, but
Mhm.
I didn't have the understanding or education to understand how to
Mhm.
overcome what someone else was projecting towards me.
Yeah. Well, that's that free will thing, I guess, right? So
Right.
you
So
had free will. Yeah.
I I wouldn't have done it on my own,
Hmm.
but when someone else is overpowering you,
Yeah.
um, you know, they can't stop. I don't know if that can be stopped, but I
Yeah.
don't think it had to happen. But I am, yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah. I was just curious because I was just talking with somebody the other day, and I debate this all the time: free will versus, like you said, heaven's plans or
Right,
predetermination, and
right,
and and
right,
it's very. I think it's complicated. I don't think it's one or the other. I think there's kind of
right.
a combination of things.
The
So
collaboration.
so you're 12 years old, you're going up the hill, this scarf is tied around you, so I want to help people understand this, and I want to understand it. So you see yourself going to what you feel is your imminent death, and from my understanding, the way you just told it, you sustained some pretty serious injuries. It wasn't like you just blacked out.
Right.
So at what so you I've heard a lot of times people will like leave their bodies before their deaths. Do you remember leaving your body, or
No,
you
I
were there and then
didn't.
you were somewhere else?
I didn't leave my body uh, at that time. Not until Jesus came, then I did.
Okay.
But I didn't know I was leaving my body because I felt completely whole and I felt completely like me.
Mhm.
And I didn't. There was no change for me except this this extraordinary love and peace and all the goodness just wrapped into one moment. It was just everything. So
At some point though, the scarf became detached. It came off of you, right?
right. And so I found that out because my grandfather, the engineer, my father, they said that the scarf went through the gears, came out flying on top, that hole that came out the top.
Mhm.
So this scarf somehow miraculously came off my neck after being so tight it tore all the skin off my neck. And it went through these gears which would have torn it to shreds, and then it came out on top and it flew perfectly straight and perpendicular with no tears in it anywhere. It
Yeah.
was like no one had ever worn it. So when they saw that, and they were at the bottom of the hill, they knew there was a great sign of the supernatural. They knew there was so much more going on than an engineer could explain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah,
So you find yourself after you're looking at your imminent death, and then you find yourself lying there, and Jesus comes to you. Um, so at this point, you felt like you were still in your body, I assume, and you saw Jesus, and you see the angels, but then they took you to somewhere, right? After you saw them.
right, right. So when they came and they approached, and I didn't know that they were angels. I didn't know what they were. They looked like they had some armor and boots, and they had these big wings that definitely were. They looked heavy and soft at the same time, but they looked like they were on a mission. And so they took me. Jesus carried me, and they were alongside, and we flew because I remember hearing this. I felt this complete peace and comfort. I remember feeling like I was in a state of almost so much bliss. And then I heard this shrill of a scream, and it almost snapped me out of it. And I looked down, and that's when I saw my mother running like a chicken with her head cut off, just running at the bottom of the hill. I saw my grandfather kneeling by this tree, and my grandmother behind him, and they believed I died because there was no other option. And so I could see them in my mother's pink coat, and I knew that because later we spoke, and they knew that. They just knew, because how would I know that? There's no way you can visually see that from the top of where I was. So we flew, and he took me to. It was a quick flight. We were there, landed safe. I sat on his lap under this big tree that, later in life I read things and I go, oh, was that tree? So for me, it's all reverse learning. Things I saw, now when I see things, I go, oh, that's what that was. And that's been over my lifetime. So it's always really magical. And I remember seeing that tree, and that tree had wisdom. It was so wise. And I say that because I remember it. It looked, well, I've seen pictures in California where the trees are so big you can walk inside. Have like it was almost like that. And it had, and then I remember, so I have to piece it together to make it relatable to things I've seen here. Like I've seen things here where, like I watched Harry Potter and they had a sorting hat, and it could tell which one. So this tree had that ability to decide if someone was, and what it was deciding was your truth. Are you being open and truthful or because they know everything about you, but people still try to say, no, I didn't do that, or no, that wasn't me. And I watched, because we sat there, and I remember thinking, I don't think I wrote this in the book, but I think there was someone, I felt like he might have been a thief or something, but he was traveling through, and they didn't let him. Something happened. He went down somewhere, and I didn't see fire or anything like that, but he wasn't going farther than the tree in that moment. Maybe later, maybe someone else approached. I don't know. But it was wisdom. So the only thing I've ever read was that there's, the tree of knowledge. So I thought, well, and it was very much, had ability to do that, but I didn't actually write about that. Yeah.
So, so you fly with Jesus and the angels, and you come to this other place, and then I understand you then encountered some more beings.
Yeah. So when we got there, because I said I have to go back, once I saw my mother screaming at the bottom of the hill, it was like I snapped into a different state of mind, and I said, I have to go back. My mother will never make it without me. She cannot survive. She will not make it. And I said, look at her. Look at that. She was just a mess running around. So, and I was, after the war and everything, I knew what it meant. My mother always told me that, what a blessing and what I was, because she never could have kids. It was just a whole thing. So I saw this panic. So I asked them, and they weren't prepared for that. I felt like they were like, really, are you sure? And so when I got there, a council came, and I was sitting on Jesus' lap, and we were having, a nice visit. And this council came, and I call it a council now. When I was a child, I just thought it was people, beings. They got together and they huddled, they talked, but they all had the same kind of, like a cloak. And so they were official. And then I realized that they were miffed by it. They were just miffed. They're like, really? Does she really want to go back? Is that possible? Would that be okay? There was a lot of discussion. And I knew in that time that I talked about free will, I knew in that time that they were seriously considering what my heart was communicating. And they didn't ignore it, and they didn't ignore me, and they didn't make me feel like they're the all powerful and I'm nobody. They made me feel like we're going to make this absolutely best choice for everyone. And it wasn't ever felt like I was overpowered. I just knew that they were wiser than me and that they were going to consider a bigger picture. So they had limits. And I realized this when I became a nurse. We have a scope of practice and we do everything we possibly can to save someone's life, but within our scope of practice, then we might have to call in, another team or a specialist or, other people. Mm-hmm. So that's how it felt. So they reached their limit with me. And I smile because, I guess I was the problem child, but then came another council and I thought, oh boy, like who are these? Where, and they just came from different towns. So it was almost like community leaders. I don't know. I think here we try to emulate government in some way, sometimes like heaven.
We'll get back to Grief to Growth in just a few seconds. Did you know that Brian is an author and a life coach? If you're grieving or know someone who is grieving, his book, Grief to Growth, is a best-selling, easy-to-read book that might help you or someone you know. People work with Brian as a life coach to break through barriers and live their best lives. You can find out more about Brian and what he offers at www.grieftogrowth.com, www.growth.com. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit www.patreon.com/grieftogrowth, www.patreon.com/GRIEF2GROWTH to make a financial contribution. And now, back to Grief to Growth.
So they had their people who were, in charge of this particular issue. Mm-hmm. And they came and now there were more and they had different colored cloaks. Everything looked very realistic, very official. It wasn't anything, that I would think like, wow, I'm on another planet or something like that. It just was beautiful and loving and extraordinary. So now they had their job to do. And again, there were questions and they were communicating with me and each other. And they had a limit of what they could do. And we were at a crossroad. Like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with her?
So you were saying you were saying you want to come back, and they were like, well, we're not sure if this is okay.
We're not so sure that that's the best thing for you. Like, or they listened. There was a lot of telepathic communication. So everything was listened to, my heart, my mind, all this information was beyond anything I've ever experienced here, in how well they collaborate. Here we do our best to collaborate, but we have ego and all these other factors that come in. There, it's a pure collaboration. It comes from a place of pure love, wisdom, and there's no smoke and mirrors. Everything's clear. Mm-hmm. So that group, I could see the first group I could see was relieved when the second council came in and they all gathered and talked. And then the second group I could see, now they called in even more. So more kept coming. And I thought, oh, there's more. And Jesus was very patient and just sitting and we were talking and it was just, and then finally, I guess they were still stuck with what was going to happen, or not stuck isn't the right word, but analyzing. Mm-hmm. So along came, they had to wake this other being, and he was an older man. And I say a man because he had me to study his face, and it was very chiseled, and I didn't know who he was. But he actually put his arms under my armpits, kind of from behind, and he just sort of glided me around really fast to show me what I thought looked like universities or libraries or houses of information to let me know intelligence, how intelligent all this is, because he's showing me old because I think he wanted me to equate age with wisdom.
Hmm.
And then all those places of records or films, or he just let me know that everything is taken into consideration. Everything and our understanding, he let me know, he taught me so many things in a very short time, and they come out as I grew older, not at 12, but in my adult life, these things would just keep unfolding
Hmm.
where I recognized, and it was usually would unfold when I was helping someone else. I would get that information or knowledge, and I would have better words to say to the person, maybe, or better, because of course I didn't tell people what happened to me, but I communicated as a nurse or as a friend, mother, whatever. So it was amazing what, and I learned that there's like levels of that, we're all at different stages of growth. We're at different stages of learning. And so they showed me by these different councils and all these levels that there's just, you think you know everything, but there's always more. There's
Hmm.
always more to know. And that I may not know why or anything, but there is a system that does, and that it will perfectly fit to what's best for me and for you and for everyone. It it does the absolute best with what's happened, and sometimes it is from our free will, and they're trying to heal it, put it back together,
Hmm.
fix it,
Hmm.
move it along. It's a work in progress. So it was really interesting. As a child, it just didn't all come through in one. When I brought it here, I didn't really need all that right away, but as I grew up, it would all come through.
Wow.
Yeah, and it
So,
still does. It
so,
still does.
so they wake up the older,
Yeah.
wiser person, and is that who you finally convinced to let you come back?
No, 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 no. I didn't feel like I had, and I didn't feel like I had to convince them. I felt like when they knew, and I trusted them completely, that they, when you really trust someone, you just know they're going to make the right they're going to
Okay.
work with
Hmm.
you. They're going to
Hmm.
work with you. They're
Hmm.
not trying to. So he was, nobody wanted to wake him. He was pretty grouchy and serious, and he was more of a heavy, he was heavy. He was like, don't bother me unless you really know, don't come to me unless you really have to. Like he's very specific
Hmm.
in his role. And I thought, oh, great, you know. And so yeah. And so later in life, I was out somewhere and I was an adult, and I remember hearing a name, and I was actually watching the Olympics with friends, and it was a couple years back, and I hear this name, and I said, that's him. And I couldn't share it because I hadn't explained all this to my friends. I said, how do you spell that? How do you spell that?
Hmm.
So they said this name, and why would we be talking about that in the Olympics? I don't remember. It just was random.
Oh,
And
wow.
so they said Melchizedek, and I didn't know
Oh,
how to
yeah. Yeah.
spell that, or who is that. So anyway, there's very little written, but from what I experienced there, that's who that was. Yeah.
So you said it was. Sounds like it was a collaborative thing. We're trying to figure out
Yeah.
what's the best thing for Suzanne and for
And
everybody
everyone,
and everybody.
they consider everyone involved. They really do. And even back probably to your ancestors, because they have the records of everything, and we're all connected. And I really knew that we have families, and we love each other, but we're not designed to be ripped apart, never to see each other again. That would not be the point of anything. So to them, the separation is not very long because time there is different. So the separation there is quick. The separation here is a lot longer,
Right.
because we feel like, day by day, but there the time is just so much different. So
So at what point was it decided you were coming back, and what did that look like? What happened?
okay. So after Melchizedek came back and he showed me everything, and I felt like he was letting them know I did my best. I don't know. And he was kind of like, I don't know. I did my best. They were all standing there going, I don't know. They weren't at a conclusion. And then I remember Jesus looking at me and I was looking at him. And then we both looked over and there was like this mountains, or it was like a hillside. And then over that hill, this big golden light just came over and it just came towards us. And I thought it looked like a hand because to me, it felt like it was coming, reaching, but
Mm-hmm.
it was this big light. And then Jesus and that light, they became one light. And then that light of gold, if that makes any sense, but they were gold. It was this gold light. He connected with it. It touched him first. That connected, and then my heart. And then he looked at me, and they had said to me right before that came, because they were like, we don't know. And they said, are you sure you want to go back? You're going to have pain. We can't promise anything, life. Because let's face it, here, we're not guaranteed, we don't know. So they weren't promising me a free ride. They were like, well, we don't know. And so, are you sure? And they were, are you sure, sweetheart? They kept saying, are you sure? And I said, yes, I'm 100% sure she will not make it. I have to. And they were just like, wow, I don't know about that. So then that golden light came. I believe that was the permission when Jesus actually became, Jesus and God are one. So it became one. Then he let me know he was all that. So I mean, I knew right away, but then I was like, whoa. Okay, so that's the ultimate, the one, that's it. And so that was the God light, like that was God, Jesus, all combined. It just boom. And then there was a smile, and he let me know everything would be all right, and he would stay with me. But I wasn't afraid. They didn't scare me. They just, it was kind of realistic, and they didn't scare me or anything. And I made the decision, and God said, okay. And so I came back, and I was very, very badly injured. So they actually, yeah.
So you at that point, did you fly back down, or did you
Yeah.
just find yourself back in your body?
No, he actually carried me back.
Okay.
And so when people say they separated from their body, I still felt like I had a body, because he was like holding me like you'd hold your child,
Mm-hmm.
and carried me back. So we came back, and I had the best time there. So we came back, and I thought, okay, he's going to stay with me longer. And he did, until my parents and helpers. We didn't have 911 back then, or cell phones, so it was a long time before help arrived.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only like a volunteer, because we were in the middle of nowhere. And so I think I know they had to have done a spontaneous sort of healing, as far as me being able to have any type of movement, because I had broken my neck, and I had many, many injuries, and I had I was really, really mangled.
Right.
Blood
So
everywhere.
and I remember I heard you tell the story that you calculated, I guess your engineering family, that it took
Yeah,
them 45 minutes to reach you.
on a sunny day
Yeah.
with,
So
yeah.
so what did it feel like in terms of the time that you were gone from your body? Was there any sense of time when you were gone, or it was
So
45 minutes here?
that's a good question. So the calculation was definitely for friends, family, and loved ones, so that you could get a sense of it, and be part of it. The time for me felt sometimes it feels like a moment and sometimes it feels like years. I mean, I couldn't even put it all together because the the ability to express and communicate and see everything, and the knowledge and the language, it, imagine if like we just looked at each other and I knew everything about you and you knew everything about me and you completely trusted me. We had no hidden agenda, no anything. And the ability to communicate with your eyes was, it was extraordinary. So they have time for that. Time just flies by.
Hmm.
It just flew by and you do so much more.
Hmm.
Here we take forever to get something done. And it's hurry up and wait, and we work really fast and we work overtime and double time, but there they get it done.
Yeah.
And with humor and love, and so it wasn't stressful.
Right.
It was more, but they definitely have a system, a working system. And I used to joke with my friends and say, now that they retire, some people, I'm like, yeah, well, or they'll say, rest in peace. I'm like, guess what? You're going to be working on the other side. There's
Yeah.
more to do. Like, you're not sitting back. You're going to be involved.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So and I understand when you came back and your body was about the time that your mother was arriving, and your mother witnessed something as she arrived there, didn't she?
right. So she came up the hill and now she's exhausted, and they reach the top of the hill and she sees me. And originally at the bottom, my grandmother held her from coming to the top. She said no one should see their daughter like that dead. They thought I was dead, so they said no one should see. I believe I died in there somewhere, I to some level of death and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they so my grandmother said, don't go. None of them came right away. They waited for help. You don't need to see that. It's going to be too gruesome, just wait for help. So when they did come, my mother got to the top of the hill expecting to see no movement, no talking, no life. And she said, she sees me talking and she says, who was talking to you and who were you talking to? And she's going, did anyone else hear that? Did you heard that, right? You heard that. And I'm saying, yeah, and and my mother's like, look at her, she's smiling, she's laughing. What is going on? And all this blood. And so it doesn't make sense to us, like how you could see your child completely mangled and in this pool of blood. Like, that alone could give you a stroke or heart attack right there. And so for her to see me smiling and talking and about, Jesus was just here, and they're thinking, Jesus, like what? So it was a quick thing. And she immediately, they were more concerned with my physical, nobody turn her, nobody touch her, we need this,
Right.
we need that. And then that all started, and and they drove me to the hospital in the car because we didn't have 911. We didn't have an ambulance service yet. And we didn't even have a hospital in that area. So we had to go all the way to New York from Pennsylvania in the snowstorm on the highway. So while we were driving, I remember his name was Steve, and he had a blue light. He was a volunteer. And I'm in the back seat and my mother is holding it together. I know she's just thinking, just get me to the hospital. And I'm still telling her, and she's saying, shh, like, that's enough. No more. We're not going to talk about this. You need your rest. Don't talk about it when we get there. I don't want to hear anymore. Like, just real quick, she hushed it all up.
Right.
So in that moment, I just trusted that probably wasn't good for me. I should stop talking about it. And then when we got there, she actually, I think she had a nervous breakdown or something. They gave her some medication. We were both on stretchers, and I saw her go another direction.
Yeah.
And so she made it there. And then I was talking to everybody, and the doctors and nurses. it looked like it was a Catholic hospital, and I see all these nuns, and there's like a sea of nuns now. And so they had recognized the physical miracle, because there was no explanation why I would even be able to speak or why I was alive. It
Yeah.
it didn't fit. Didn't fit.
So
Still doesn't.
in terms of your injuries, without getting, really gruesome, but did you say you had broken your neck?
Yeah, my cervical spine now, at I'm an RN,
Mm-hmm.
and believe me, I wish I had those records. When I knew there was a paralysis. I remember there was a paralysis. And when I went home, I couldn't walk or anything. So there was this paralysis. So I knew my neck, even now, like, I knew that was healed. I knew it was broken, and I knew it was healed.
Mm-hmm.
And the paralysis continued even when I was home. And then there was another miraculous healing somewhere where I just got up and walked to the bathroom, and everybody, again, my mother, she just, that poor woman. So she said, what's going on? And anyway, I had two on the sides of my heads were hit so badly. They were the size of baseballs, not a softball, but a baseball on my
Mm-hmm.
temples. And later I worked in the brain and spinal cord injury unit, and I had seen what that trauma really does. And the fact that I had no internal bleeding, they were just miffed by the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
That type of swelling and all of so I knew there was spontaneous healing going on as time was going on, because I recovered rather quickly, and I became a gymnast within like the following year.
Oh, wow.
So my mother thought, just get her the gym mat, because this girl, she was so nervous, because she said she was just all twisted up, broke her neck, and now she wants to risk it all again.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt good, and so for whatever reason, I was given that level of healing.
Mm-hmm. So
And
I understand that your mother, even after witnessing, what she did with the voice at the top of the hill, and seeing your recovery, your mother swore you to secrecy.
yeah, she really did. And she said it was my second birthday. It was January 19th, and we celebrated every year. That was my second birthday.
Hmm.
She didn't want me to tell anyone. I don't think she trusted people, and she also didn't want me to relive my death, because for me, that's still, even though I can talk about it because I want to share the part with heaven, with people,
Mm-hmm.
as a mission and a thank you to God for everything, but to the experience, I still, have a lot of trauma from it. And
Sure.
and she didn't want me to have the PTSD.
Sure.
She was just trying to contain that, to the point where they tore that whole ski lift down, and everyone told my parents to sue the hill. And I remember going to a lawyer, and my mother, I remember they offered her, like, I don't know, back then it was like millions of dollars, and she said, nope, I don't want her on a stand. I don't want her talking about it. I want her to have a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that, I realized it wasn't safe to talk about her for me, for
Mm-hmm.
others. I thought, I've got to just move on, and I can't share this, because I could get sick from it, or, I just trusted her that she said, no, and then I said, never. And she said, not while I'm alive. And so I started writing my book right after she died.
No,
And
wow.
truthfully, and it took me about 6 years, because I was also working as a nurse, and I wrote it in my bathroom. by myself because I didn't want any influences in my life to. So yeah, I did honor that.
Well, I think it's important for people to remember the time frame because the term near-death experience is common now. But at the time
Right.
this happened to you, Raymond Moody was just writing his first book and coining the term. So nobody knew about this.
Nobody knew. And I really thought everyone knew. And so I had to learn how to integrate it into my everyday life, with friendships and I remember my mother having to guard me because I came back wide open and I would give you anything I had. I had no sense of boundaries. I would give, I just, yeah, everyone felt like my family. Like I just didn't understand enough.
Hmm.
So there was a lot of protection. I had to learn a lot of boundaries as a preteen and then into my teenagers where everyone wants to be the same and fit in. It wasn't a great time. I couldn't talk to a friend or, you don't want to be the freak or what is
Sure,
she talking about?
sure.
So I did learn after, that God does have a bigger plan because now when I speak about it, you know, I've had a lifetime as a science professional. And so I have that integrated and I've lived a life where I'm paid to make good decisions and choices.
Yeah,
And so for me to speak about it now, I don't have that fear of, as you do as a child, where if your mom says it's not good for you, and she would always say, like, nobody loves you more than your mother, and no one's going to protect you more than your mother. And your mother knows, and your mother this, and your mother. And so in that generation, um, you really, it was different. It was
sure.
different. You listened. It
Yeah.
meant a lot. It meant everything.
Well, there are a lot of people even today, adults that have NDEs and don't feel comfortable sharing it. And it might
Yeah.
take, and I've been to, I was telling you before, I think we started on the air, I've been to several IANS meetings and people, they barely share in front of each other.
Right.
It's so taboo in our
Private.
society. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you being brave enough to come out and tell this because it's very healing for people to hear this because we do sometimes we feel like we're alone. We feel like this doesn't make any sense. When our loved ones pass, like I was telling you before, my daughter's passed away, and am I really going to see them again? Are they
Right.
really okay? Because even with our religion, it's like, is it really true? You know,
Right.
we want to know. We want to know.
Because it's hard here. And it's easy to, you take a few really strong hits in life and it's easy to just keep going down a notch. And I remember, this is a great thing that happened. I just wrote my book and I was at a fair here in my town. It had like 100,000 people. It's an annual event. So I did a book signing and this young man, he was in a wheelchair. There was so many people. The streets are crowded, the roads are blocked off. It's 100,000 people. He found my little booth and apparently he was in a coma. He had uh, been declared clinically dead. He was in an accident.
Hmm.
And he was in a coma for a very long time. I think it was over a month or two. Or a long time. And he hadn't talked about anything. He was still full of injury. His little wheelchair found, he was about 19 or 20, found my booth and he saw my story and, the book, and he stood up and he was with his family and he walked towards me and we immediately hugged because I saw this light in his eyes, a total stranger, but I saw that gold light. I said,
Hmm.
I know where you've been.
Oh
And
wow.
he said, and I know where you've been. And he hugged me. And when he hugged me, he said, I could stay here forever.
Hmm.
And then he stood back and I said, you didn't want to come back, did you? And he goes, no. And he said, I was there and I saw Jesus, I was with Jesus and I saw my grandfather and we were sitting on a hill and I was talking to my sister because she died the year before of I think, I don't know, I don't remember.
Hmm.
Anyway, he was sitting with them. He said, I was having a really good time. I didn't need to come back. And um He goes, I was with my family. I was good. And he said, but then my sister said, you better go back if you can. If Jesus holds his hand out when he comes by, you better take it and go, because mom, just lost me. She's not going to be able to lose you too. And
Mhm.
his grandfather said, you have to. And he said, no, no. And they both said to him, take his hand if you can. If he reaches for you, take it. So he said he did. And then he looked at me and he said, what do I do with all this? And you gotta see this. He was riding a motorcycle or something. He wasn't he was a little bit on the rough side. So
Mhm.
he was looking
Mhm.
at me like, what do I do with all this? And because I said, well, thank you for sharing. And he said, but what do I do with all this? And I said, don't ask me because I'm still trying to figure it out. And we just laughed. And he said, because he said, thank you for helping me about 1,000 times. And I said, no, you helped me too.
Mhm.
And he said, how do I help you? And I said, just by being here. I'm not alone. Like now I know, I've met some. And so sharing really is so powerful
Yeah.
in, in support groups. It's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important for you guys to be able to share, but it's also really important for us. I
Yes.
personally believe that near death experiences have so much wisdom for all of us. And I've heard people say, I don't make this mistake anymore, but I've heard people say, I wish I had a near death experience because it does bring so much wisdom and stuff, but it does come with the trauma. And
It comes
so
with a lot of trauma. And that young man, he was in so much pain. His body was still I could feel the dampness of, he was still damp, and you could, and I knew he was uncomfortable because he was just placed back in it. Because
mhm.
when you leave, you get put back in. And so I knew he was like, oh, here we go with all this aches and pains. And, you know, but, um, but meeting me, and then when he spoke, his family started crying because now they heard him out loud say he didn't want to come back. So now they're thinking, oh, does he not love us? Does he love his grandpa more? And it's just not like that. It's it's about being in the moment. Where
Mhm.
you are in the moment of your life is the focus. Being alive is a gift. And so when we have that much pain, we just have to look at that. Like I try to stay and live in the moment because it's so powerful and
Mhm.
healing when we appreciate the day, just the hour. Um, and when you're on the other side, you're truly in the moment. So it's all time. And
Yeah, and I know I've talked to people who have made the decision to come back and then kind of regretted it
yeah,
because it is hard here. But I appreciate the fact that you have, and I appreciate you being
thank
here
you.
to tell your story, to give hope to so many people that again, for me, I've been studying NDEs for 20, 30 years, and I never get tired of hearing them because sometimes we think, oh, it sounds too good to be true. It's
You know what a blessing you are for someone like me to know, like, where did you come from to know to do this to help others? The fact that you have a platform for others is tremendous. Um, I really thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I know you feel this because what you're doing didn't come from an NDE, but it comes from a place of love and love for your daughter. And and it's just that small behind you to me speaks like she is with you all the time. Like she's like, go dad, go dad. So it's a really beautiful thing that you do and help in helping others as well. As much as I am, you are. Without you, my story wouldn't reach people.
Well, thanks.
So
I was talking with someone, I was interviewing someone yesterday, and she's like, thanks for what you do and sharing what you share. And I'm like, I don't have a choice. It's like, you were talking earlier. We have free will. I don't have free will when it comes to this. I think this is
it's
what,
guided. Yes.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
And I've been very fortunate that people like you have been put into my path, and We were talking earlier about, IANS. I've gotten connected with that organization. And I think this is just such an important message because I believe the problems in the world are because we've forgotten who we are. The people don't realize that we're divine beings that aren't from here. We're just here for a little while. And your story helps me so much because there are times it's like, I don't really want to be doing this, but I know it's a limited amount of time, right? I know that,
Right.
and from the other side, they're like, you're fine. You're only there for a little while.
There, it's just a bump and a bruise. You'll be okay. They're, I get so much help, and I tell the story because I ask all the time for help. If it's my car keys, and I know I've been to places of worship and people talk about, the death of Christ or the death of this, and I know the significance is tremendous in that, but there on the other part of it, there's so much joy. There's tremendous joy, like childlike joy, like dance, music, love, laughter is really what he's wanting you to have here. Listen to more music, be with your friends, help another person. All those things are truly in life,
Yeah.
and on the other side too, it's just there. Um, wow, we cut through a lot of the boundaries aren't there. So
Right.
like things are open. You're more open.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
where
Well,
we
the thing is about where we are, and I love what you just said. There's good and bad here, and we can choose what we focus on. And
right.
when we realize that the bad is only temporary, then then we can choose to focus on the good. And that's really what I've been working on for the last however many years it's been now. But really choosing to focus on what do we have that while we're here. There's so much stuff that we can do, and the bad stuff we just have to get through, and we will.
And together we
Yeah.
can get through it together. We can get through it, and you can ask for help. And people have talked to me, and I say, when I ask for help, I just talk. I don't have. For me, it was extraordary, and so intelligent, but at the same time, it's simple. You
Hmm.
don't have to be a cookie cutter person or fit into a certain box. They love you the way you are. You don't have to look or act or be a certain way, or they look everything about you is unique and original and special, and we do that here. It doesn't come from anywhere else but here. And so um it's absolutely great to meet like-minded people who get it, and it's great to share because, like that young man who shared with me, even though I've had my experience, that was tremendous for me. I was like,
Yeah.
we were just so happy, and um to know it's okay to say I met Jesus.
Yeah.
and and I always wondered about that too. I thought, wow, doesn't he get a bad rap here sometimes? And Jesus is, I used to feel bad because I thought, what are people doing to him? He came so simple. Love is simple. It's just love, love, love. And there's no other question about it. It's simple. You can talk to him, ask him. He'll guide you if you want to. I put my free will down. Sometimes I'm like, just tell me what you want me to do. I'll do it. And he just smiles like, and that's how this started. I was sitting on my bed with talking to my husband. He was on a Zoom meeting, and he said, what are you thinking? And I said, you know, my daughter has a chronic illness. And I said, I think she's feeling a little better these days. Maybe I think I might be ready to do more.
Mm.
'Cause I thought, oh,
Mm.
I'll just write a book, put it out there, and I can just go about my life. And if someone wants to pick it up, fine. If not, fine. My children have it. My friends have it,
Yeah. Yeah.
but, where it'll go wherever it needs to go. I didn't write it to be an author and all that. I just wrote it to help. And then I said, I think I could do more. Within 24 hours, the phone rings, And there's these people lined up from this community just saying, welcome.
Yeah.
What do
Absolutely.
you want to do? And I
Yeah.
thought, everything. So
Awesome.
and
Well,
here you are.
I
Here
appreciate
you
you
are.
answering the call.
Yeah.
Well, Suzanne, we're just about out of time. I
Out of
want to give
time.
you a
Okay.
chance to say anything you'd like to say before we sign off for the day.
Wow. If only people knew how much, Jesus loved them, and that heaven is real. It's the realest thing I know, and that love is real, and it's the most powerful thing I know. So just, even though sometimes the world sounds like, all these bad things are happening, I guarantee you there's a lot of good things at work. Just keep your heart open. Just
Wow.
keep it open.
Thanks. I want to tell people how they can get your book. It's My Secrets from Heaven. It's on Amazon.
Right.
And it's by Susanne, Susanne Seymoure. It's Seymoure. And Suzanne, are you open to people contacting you on Facebook or anything?
Yeah, that would
Okay.
be fine.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook, Susanne Seymoure. I'm definitely open to, if anyone wants to drop me a note or anytime. I'm definitely open.
Well, I really, really appreciate you being here. It was great meeting you today, and enjoy the rest of your day, Suzanne.
You too. I feel really lucky to have met you as well. Thank you.
Don't forget to like, hit that big red subscribe button, and click the notify bell. Thanks for being here.